Ranking new movies released in December from worst to best. In last place is Mufasa the Lion King. Like I said, I simply just did not enjoy a second of this movie. I could not get myself to care about anything happening in it. I feel like the songs are very bland, and overall, this movie really just did not need to exist. And visually, I do think this movie looks a lot better than I was expecting. A lot of the landscapes and stuff do look pretty good visually, but I still cannot get over the CGI animated style. I hate it, and it just makes everything feel so lifeless. And number 11 is Kraven the Hunter. This movie is pretty much bad on every front, but at least it's so bad in some points where I actually could enjoy it because of how dumb it was. And I will say there are at least some decent fight scenes. Like, I think the final fight is actually very entertaining, but every time characters open their mouth and start talking, you remember how bad this movie is, because nothing can make this film make up for how bad the script is. It is just absolutely terrible. And it's kind of hilarious to see the CEO of Sony Pictures come out and defend Craven and Madam Web and say, like, critics are just painting these films and that they're actually good. Like, no, they are not. At number 10, I have Nutcrackers, a new Christmas movie from David Gordon Green, the guy that did the recent Halloween trilogy. So I guess he was done with that holiday, wanted to move over to something different with Ben Stiller. I had hopes for this, but it ended up feeling just so unbelievably bland, boring, and generic for most of it. I will say the ending is pretty heartwarming though. At number 9 is Y2K. This is A24's latest horror movie. It's just a slasher film taking place at Y2K, which is when the year turned from 1999 to 2000. What if the technology all turned evil and tried to kill you pretty much? The premise sounds stupid, it's because, yeah, it is. And this movie is dumb, but it smartly knows just how dumb it is and leans into it. And it actually was surprisingly pretty funny. Like, definitely not a cinematic masterpiece, but you could waste your time in worse ways than watching this film. At number 8 is another holiday theme movie, but not really. We have Carry On. This is Netflix's new thriller. It follows this TSA agent who's pretty much being taken as a pawn by these terrorists that are trying to get stuff through baggage claim. So half the movie is just him putting this earpiece in and listening to Jason Bateman, who plays the villain, talking to him, giving him instructions and stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, Jason Bateman was an absolute blast in this movie. Again, this is nothing really amazing. I feel like it's being really overhyped, probably just because of the low quality of Netflix originals lately, but this was perfectly fine and enjoyable enough. Had some tense moments, some really dumb moments too, like him chasing after an airplane in a baggage cart. Number 7 is a complete unknown, Timothy Chalamet's new Bob Dylan biopic, and directed by James Mangold. I had a lot of hopes for this one as well, and I did enjoy this film. I think it is perfectly fine. It kind of just ends up feeling like a stereotypical biopic, and not being a fan of Bob Dylan, I didn't end up caring about it that much. But I do have to say, Timothy Chalamet himself deserves so much credit and single-handedly raised the rating for this movie up to this high on the ranking, because he is absolutely incredible as Bob Dylan and he captures everything so perfectly. At number 6 is Juror No. 2 with Nicholas Hoult. This is Clint Eastwood's probably last film ever made, and if you don't know, it follows this guy that's selected for jury duty, and as he's on the jury, he starts realizing he might have committed the crime that they're actually going over. And this was a really enjoyable film. Nicholas Hoult was actually incredible in this film. Like, you can see him going through all the emotions at once as he's trying to piece together that, hey, I might have been the guy that actually committed this murder. I wasn't totally satisfied with how things wrapped up and the ending of the film, but overall it's a very enjoyable movie. I definitely recommend checking it out. It's on Max. Number 5 is The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. I think I enjoyed this a lot more than other people because I just went into it expecting something completely different than the trilogy, and that's what this is. Now, I will say the animation is a little janky and takes some getting used to for sure. But once the movie settles in, I do think the animation actually works and I like the style, and I also just really connected to these characters. I thought Hera was really intriguing and her whole dynamic and feud with Wolf going on was great. I really liked the stuff with Helm Hammerhand we got also in this movie. I think the biggest mistake was them naming this The War of the Rohirrim, because it's really not about that. This is a lot more personal and smaller scale battles, but I really like that. And number 4 is Sonic 3. I've been a hater of the Sonic franchise. I think the first two are pretty mediocre, if not below mediocre films, but Sonic 3 was an absolute blast. It ups the ante in every way. The stakes are higher, there's more jokes, more and bigger action. It just goes for it all, and honestly, so much of it worked. This is so much fun. Shadow was a much needed added contrast to kind of balance out Sonic and the goofiness of these movies, and I thought Keanu Reeves was incredible as him. Jim Carrey gets to play two characters in this one, which is just double the fun, and he's an absolute blast, giving you one of the goofiest performances you'll ever see. And this movie just kind of won me over, plus the post-credit scene was absolutely awesome. I'm actually excited for Sonic 4 now. Now, before I get to the top 3, make sure to like the video quick and let me know your top 3 favorite movies of December in the comments below, or you can do your entire list if you want. At number 3, I have Paddington in Peru. I got to see this movie early, and I absolutely had a blast with this. Now, I will say it's probably the weakest of the Paddington films, but that still means it's really good. It still gives you those same just emotional, heartwarming moments that you always want. It's just as funny. We get some really fun side characters played by Olivia Colman and Antonio Banderas, and overall it's impossible to not just smile 90% of the time watching this film. I have reviews for all these movies individually on my channel. I'll link at the very end, by the way, if you want to go check that out. But at my number 2, I have Nosferatu. This thing was absolutely incredible. Probably one of the best looking movies of the entire year. This doesn't at least get nominated for the best cinematography at the Oscars. Something's up there. It's rigged because this movie is beautiful to look at. It perfectly pulls you into this atmosphere and this different time and place. Lily Rose Depp really gave one of my favorite performances of the entire year. The physical acting, like stuff with her eyes and her body contorting as she's being possessed, was absolutely insane, and it's all her. There's no CGI or effects added on. It's literally just her doing it. Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok himself completely transforms and is lost in this character. He doesn't look even recognizable, and the voice is completely different. You literally wouldn't be able to tell who it was if they didn't tell you. It's an absolute great movie. Gothic horror is so back in a much needed way. But my number 1 is The Count of Monte Cristo. This is a French language adaptation of the very famous book, which I've actually never read or seen any of the previous adaptations, but this immediately pulled me in. I see why this story is such a classic. The movie's beautiful, has one of my favorite scores of the year, great performances, and this is ultimately just a 3-hour-long revenge epic that's also a character study at the same time. I was hooked the entire runtime. It never gets boring, spanning over decades. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, comment your list in the comments below. I want to see what you guys thought of movies you watched in December, and make sure to click below me to watch either my movie reviews on my channel. There's a whole playlist of all the ones I covered in this, plus so many more. Or even below that, you can click and watch my top 10 movies of the entire year.